Hi everyone, and welcome to the webinar. Today we're going to be talking about how to increase your sales through psychology and understanding your customers and the way that they make choices and the way that they think. There's a few details here about me and how you can get in touch with me if you need to, and I'll put the website up at the end of the presentation as well. Some of you might have joined us through createafashionbrand.com, which is our resource website where we don't sell anything. We're not trying to promote anything or get you to buy a product. This is purely for information, and it's our website where we're providing a resource for all the brands who are trying to start up and trying to improve their services to hopefully start a new brand or expand an existing one. So let's get on to today's webinar. Now, this has no bearing on where you are in the world, how you think, your religion, or whatever it is that you believe in. Our brains work exactly the same way for everybody because they're all built the same way. So we'll just briefly go through the little areas of our brain. Now, most people will tell you that we're rational people, that we make choices based on what we need, things like that, but actually we don't. There's a little process in our heads that everybody goes through, and it's all based on your emotions. And this is kind of our basic brain. If there's anyone who is from a medical field in the audience, please don't judge me. I'm not a medical person. This is just a sketch. And this is the amygdala, this little blue dot here. And that part controls your emotional response. So every time we come in contact with something, we see a picture, we see a word, we hear something, everything that we do has an emotional response in our brain. And then you've got the prefrontal cortex, the frontal cortex. This goes into all the planning and the judgment. And we do have a certain element of planning and judgment when we're making choices, but it is generally controlled by our emotions. And the last couple of bits, the nucleus accumbens and the ventral tegmental, I hope I pronounced those correctly, these both control what's called a reward response. And these are the things that are usually triggered in our brains after we've purchased something. It's that satisfaction feeling that you get when you've bought something you really love and you can't wait to try it on or get it out the box or use it. Okay. Now, when we're shopping, there are two parts of the brain that are activated. All these little areas in our brain light up like little Christmas trees. And it's because of two things, either a pleasure response or a pain response. Now, the pleasure and the pain part of our brains is influenced by four things. You've got information and choice on one side, and you've got your emotions and preferences on another. Now, your preferences are the things that make you unique. They're the things that make you an individual. And if you're trying to sell a product, we can't change anything about that in a person. We can't influence your personal preferences. But what we can do is we can set out the information we have and the choices that we give our customers in a certain way so that everything is very nicely laid out for them. They have the correct amount of information and the correct amount of choice available. And these are the things that we're going to cover in the webinar today. So we'll have a look at the information and the choice. Okay, so a quick history lesson. I don't know how old a lot of you guys are. It's very rude to ask someone their age, but I'm quite old, and I remember a time before the internet and mobile phones. And yes, that time for you young people did exist, and it wasn't that long ago. But it's quite interesting seeing the difference from then and now when we've got all of this technology. Because if we go back in history, 12,000 years ago, which was the start of kind of the first revolution in terms of the wheel and agriculture, when we started ploughing fields, something quite interesting happened. We came up with this concept of market towns, and they still actually exist today. whatever you are, some of you guys, I know you're in London and places like that, and Hong Kong, your market town kind of areas, that would be in the center of the city. You know, people live all the way out, they live in the countryside and things like that, but the idea of the market town was a main focused area. It was very highly populated. If you were selling a product, if you were making something or food, whatever it was, you would have to go to these areas to try and sell your products. There was nowhere else. And everybody would congregate in these areas. And we still have that today. If you're in London, you've got Oxford Street, that kind of central part of the city where there's loads more shops. If you're in Hong Kong, that's kind of TST area, central, those really built up kind of shopping places with lots of restaurants, lots of things going on, clubs and bars and all these different things. So it's kind of interesting that we still have this element today. But then in 1840 we had the Industrial Revolution, and that allowed for manufacturing, it allowed for products to be cheaper. And for the first time in history ever, people actually started to buy things for pleasure. Before that point, if you were rich, you could afford to buy nice things and things for pleasure, but for the average person, for the everyday person, you bought things that you only needed. You had to buy food to keep yourself alive. You had to clothe yourself, and you would buy the basics that you needed. There was no buying for pleasure. But after the Industrial Revolution, we actually started getting things that we just wanted, which was unheard of before that time. Then in 1990, the internet became commercialized and widespread. Now, I have to kind of do a bit of a disclaimer. The internet was around before that time, but most people didn't actually use it. It was very high-end businesses, things like that. People didn't have it in their homes. At this point, a few people might have had a dial-up situation, but generally the average person didn't have it. And this was pre-mobile phone, I point out. And I don't just mean smartphones, I mean mobile phones in general. So it's quite an interesting time. Now what this all kind of means for you guys is that at that time, up until the internet started, there was people who looked for information. For example, if you're at school and you were doing a project, you had to physically get up out of your seat, get on a bus, walk, get in a car or whatever it was to get to a library, and you had to sit there and you had to physically search through books, physical books, and maybe photocopy or take them out. And if you took them out of the library, you had to cart them home and then look through them. And you did this over and over and over again. But that was the only choice you had. You didn't have all this knowledge that was online. In the same way, if you wanted something very special for an event, like an engagement ring, or you're buying a dress or a cake or something that was extra special, you'd have to go into your market town, you'd have to go into the center of the city where you had more choice just to find something that you wanted. So everything that you had, everything that you wanted, you had to travel for. You would be very, very lucky if you walked down to your local high street or your local group of shops and you could find everything that you wanted. Generally, you'd have some kind of general store, a bakery, somewhere for vegetables, and maybe a butcher, and a clothing shop if you were lucky. Everyone else, we had to travel for anything. We had to just go in and travel. So in 1995, and this is where it comes really interesting, this is where the internet becomes common in everybody's homes. And I mean mass everybody then starts having the internet. Still dial-up at this point for most people, but everyone starts to have the internet. Now you have to remember, some of you might not, but back then the internet wasn't what it is now. You know, if you typed a search into something like Google, you might only come up with 3 or 4, 5 pages if you were lucky. It isn't the hundreds of thousands of pages that we have now. So the point that I'm trying to make here, and it's slightly long-winded way of saying it. But for this entire period of time, all the way up to 1995, which wasn't really that long ago, the way people made choices for anything was the same. They bought what they needed. They had to travel to get it, so it became a pain, it became a chore, and you made maybe a special day out of it. And you didn't have the choice you have today. You had what was in front of you. That was it. Whatever was there, whatever was in front of you, was your choice. There was nothing else to choose from. So if we move on to now, we have to think about the amount of choice people have. I mean, it's everywhere. You know, if you do your Google search now, I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of pages on all sorts of things. But the problem with that is that our brains have stayed the same. You know, we've had 12,000 years of thinking in one way and one way only. And yet now, all of a sudden, our choices have just exploded. They're everywhere. There's so much of it. And actually, a lot of people think that that's better. But for our brains, it's not so great. And this is why. Choice comes under two different areas. When you've got choice for competition, we really like that. As human beings, we love that because it means that we can shop around and we can get really good deals. And that's fantastic. The thing with that is that we've already made a choice on what we're looking for. We already know what product we're going to try and buy, or holiday we want to go on, or car we want to get. The difference is we're just looking for a really good deal. We know we've made our decision. We just want to see what we can get on top as a little bit extra. When we get down to the choice of the actual product itself, the opposite thing starts to happen. Quite often, if we have too much choice, our brains are so overwhelmed with the amount of choice that we have that actually we don't have the patience to look properly at any of them. And in a lot of cases, we actually don't bother. We just shut down the web page, shut down the catalogue or whatever it is. We don't want to know. We just don't want to look at it. There's too much going on in our brain. And those little areas of the brain that I showed you right at the beginning, they're lighting up so much through both pleasure and pain that actually our brains just get really confused and we don't really make a decision. And a lot of the time that means we won't make a decision and we actually leave with nothing. So we're going to try this little game, and you can do this along. You don't need to tell me, but this is a great thing to actually test on some friends, and it's a really simple test. It came from a load of research that was done in America on the way in which we choose and the optimum amount of products that should be shown to somebody for them to make a good decision in a relatively quick space of time. So they went into supermarkets and they had a various selection of jam. Now I've just done it with different colours in pots, but if you imagine that you're standing in a supermarket, you're looking at the jam shelf or whatever it is, and you've got to pick a jam. Somebody has said to you, you must come home with some jam. Well, you take a look at the pictures, there's 3 there. It might take you a couple of seconds. All the branding's the same, the manufacturer's the same, the labeling's the same, and you decide which jam you want. Easy enough, there's only 3. On this one we've got 5, and what they found in their research was that 5 would take slightly longer than 3, because obviously you're considering each and every one, but still not that long, maybe sort of 15 seconds, 20 seconds maximum. Now this is where it gets confusing. In most people's opinion, you would think more choice is better. But actually, when we have a look at this slide, loads of jam, our eyes, if you notice, start moving from one to the other to the other. We're not concentrating on each individual jar like we did with 3 and like we did with 5. Our eyes are kind of darting all around the place. We're not really paying attention to one particular jar at a time and processing them like we did the other slides. We're just trying to scan through all of the products that are there, all of the jams that are there, and something will jump out at us. A colour, in this case, will jump out at us, And that'll be our decision. And we'll do it just because it's jumped out, not because it's the right product, not because it's a flavor of jam that we like, but because that one is the one that's sticking out to us. Oh, hi, Donald from Hong Kong. Hi, I'm just saying hi to you. You just joined us. Thank you. So the brain cycle. So this is how our brains actually work. We get the information. We're looking for the information when we go online, generally, or we're looking for something. We then have some choices to make. So we scan through some of our choices. We then compare the choices that we've made, and our brain has an emotional response. Now this circle will just keep going round and round and round until we have that emotional response. And that's at the point that we buy something. It's only when our brains light up in the right way, where the pleasure part is higher than the pain part, that is when we purchase. We then become a consumer. That's when you get conversion. And this is what we're trying to increase. As makers and sellers of products, we want people to make one choice, and we want them to make your choice. As long as it's the right one, we don't want to force anyone, but we do want to move the shopper from just looking at the information to making the one choice that's right for them, and then buying what we have to offer. So this is where we're going to have a look a bit more at the actual conversion part and the things that we can do as retailers or designers to try and get to lay things out in the right way so that people can consider them, look at them, make the right choice for them, and hopefully improve our conversion rate. So let's have a think about what people do and what they think when they're looking at a website. And this is just generally any website. The things that go through people's minds is the stuff genuine? Am I buying a real product? Is the product real? Can I see it? Can I touch it? Is it a real thing, or is it fake? Is it what I think it is? And can I trust the site? In terms of choice, there's too much choice is always a problem. Then that means they can't decide on a product. And then there's also the opposite effect. If there's not enough choice, have they missed a better option somewhere else? So what we're trying to do, we looked at the brain, the little areas of the brain. We're trying to increase the pleasure part of the brain sensors and decrease the pain. This is what will help customers make a good choice for them. So what we want to do as retailers, whether that's in a physical store or online, doesn't matter, we want to improve the trust that the customer has in us. We want to make sure they have enough choice, that they can find what they want easily as well. It has to be easy to find. That we provide them with a really good service, and we provide them with really good value. Now on the pain side, the things that are going to create that pain barrier and all those pain responses in our brain to light up is when we distrust someone that we're speaking to. Maybe we've got too much choice, so we're being overwhelmed. It's too much hassle to find something. And then we have also bad experiences, like bad service or bad value for money. So if we put everything together, all of the emotional parts, the brain responses, everything that we've been talking about so far, it works like this. People come looking for information and they want choice. So we, as the retailer, give them information and we give them choice. And we present it in such a way that they're happy with what they have. There's no overwhelm, but they also feel like they have enough. We're then also trying to ignite those bits in their brain that increase their pleasure responses and decrease the pain. Now, if we can do all these four things and we allow people to have a look through and they find something that's right for them, that will end up being a conversion. That's a sale. And it happens every time. If you're getting the four things right and your products obviously are right for the person looking, then there'll always be a conversion. So let's have a look at the things that we can actually do in our website itself, or a physical store if you're lucky enough to have one. We'll do some general tips first. The very first thing that people should see is your best items. If you've got a physical store, this is like your shop window. If the first page they land on your website is your homepage, for example, you want that to be your best stuff, your best items, because it essentially is your window dressing. This is what will entice people in and show them that you have something that they want. The other thing that we can talk about is something called taking ownership. Now, if you've ever gone into a shop and you've tried something on, and maybe you're thinking, I don't know if I want it, but I'll try it on anyway. Once you put that pair of jeans on, or that coat, or whatever it is, and you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're really happy with what you're seeing in the mirror, this is like the best pair of jeans ever in the world, it's actually very difficult not to purchase. Our brains start doing this thing where it convinces us that we need it for a particular reason, and it's a really sensible decision. We have to go and buy it. If you've tried it on, you really like it, 99.9% of the time you will purchase. It's very, very few people that actually will put that thing back. Because when you're looking at the mirror at yourself, what you're doing is you're imagining that those things are yours already. You know that those jeans, those shoes, whatever it is, you're imagining them as yours. You've already made a purchase essentially in your brain. So if you can improve the desire and the ownership on a website, or in a store, we have changing rooms, but on a website, if you can show that to people through the use of photos, and we'll cover that in a minute, it increases their ownership of a product, and again, that increases your conversion. Now, there are also other things that you can do, things like loyalty cards and bonuses that give customers a reason to come back. It's fine for them to be happy the first time round, but you need to give them a reason to actually come back to you after they've visited the first time. If you can know your customer, things that we used to do years and years ago, where a shopkeeper would know every customer by name because they only had maybe the local village, though that's fine because they've only got 30 people maybe to remember. It's a little bit more difficult on websites. But if you can do something to personalize the customer's experience, they feel like they have more of a connection to you. So if you can do something to know your customer a bit better, things like knowing their birthday, or sending them a discount or something for, I don't know, Christmas, or their, like I said, their birthday, that's something very personal to a customer. It makes them feel like they know you and you know them. And the last point I'll say for the general kind of section, credit cards. I know this probably sounds really, really obvious, but you'd be surprised how many websites I go to where they don't offer a range of different payment options. If you're in a physical store, it's very, very different, you know, pulling out £100, or in Hong Kong terms, $1,000, and pulling that wad of cash and putting it on a counter. It's very different from just handing over a very light, slim piece of plastic. It does, the weight of the money doesn't actually really kind of come across when you're just handing over your cash. So you have to make sure that you're giving people different options in terms of making it easy for them to pay. And you would be surprised, there are still many, many websites that I see that don't offer different payment options like credit cards and PayPal and all these different things that might be in your part of the world. So make sure you've got some options there for payment as well. Now, the one thing that I find, and I think is the most important when we're looking at conversion, and I think there are certain parts of the world that do this a little bit better than others, but there's the 5 people rule of customer service. If you have amazing service in a shop or on a website or whatever it is, you might in a conversation discuss that with somebody else. Maybe if your friend asks you what you think of a particular company or product, you'd probably tell them that you had a really good experience. If the service is bad, however, on average, people tell at least 5 other people. And those 5 other people tell 5 more people. So you're up to 25 people. And the message starts to spread, and it can spread very far and wide. And I'll give you a little example. There is a company in mainland China where it's just a costume jewelry store. It's online. And I was going through there one day and I saw a few things that I wanted. So I thought, okay, well, it's fairly cheap, great, I'll give it a go. Never used them before. It looked okay. So I hand over the credit card and I get the stuff. Well, this was a year and 2 months ago, and the stuff still hasn't arrived. Now, in total, it was about $10 US, so it's nothing breaking the bank. It wasn't, expensive. But my issue was it took me 40 minutes to try and find an email address or some way I could contact this company to ask them where my stuff was. And then when I tried to contact them, it took them 4 days to get back to me. And they weren't helpful at all. There was just nothing. They said, "Oh well, wait another week." And that was it. Like, that was literally their customer service. Now, because of that, I haven't gone back to them ever again. Fair enough. But also, I've told, and I've done this presentation a few times now, to various different groups, various different people, and I must have told well over 3,000 people about this story, and I would not go back to them. So from one person having a really bad experience, there are potentially 3,000 people that now won't shop with that company because I've had a bad experience. It then puts people off. And people listen to other people. They don't listen to brands. They don't listen really to marketing messages and things like that. They're going to trust their friends more than they're going to trust a company. So if you're doing a website, make sure you have really good customer service. Deliveries should be prompt. If there's a problem, that's fine. Problems happen and customers understand that, but just be honest. And if somebody asks you a question, answer quickly and answer thoroughly. That's all people are asking. They have a problem, they just want to know an answer. So make sure, most important thing ever is your customer service, because without your customers, you don't have a business, right? So let's go on to the products and how we actually lay all the products out. So the first thing is photos. Make sure you have lots and lots of photos. If people are really unsure of what it is they're looking at, or maybe the color or what it looks like from the back or the side, or make sure you have all of these pictures available before they even ask. Every different side of your product. You also want to show them the scale of the product. Now this kind of depends on what products you're doing, but if you're doing something like a handbag or jewelry, people want to see how long it is. They want to see how big the bag is. They want to preferably see it on a person. They can visualize how it would look. And this also ties back to what we were talking about earlier about ownership. If you can have some photos with your product and a person, they can see it on a person, this increases the ownership part of their brains, which then allows them to start taking ownership of the product itself. Now you have to remember to put in details. I've seen a lot of websites where they put maybe up a photo and maybe a description and a price, and they leave it at that. They don't give you any other bits of information other than the photo and a couple of details here and there. People will ask the weirdest and most wonderful questions ever, all the time. So if you make sure you're giving them lots of information about the product, if they want it, it's there ready for them. So when they're looking, when they're making comparisons between your product and somebody else's product, it's a lot easier to look at yours, see all the information, all of the details, maybe the colors, the trims, the fabrics, anything that you think is appropriate for your product. And they can see all those things, whereas the other person hasn't bothered to put them on. So they feel far more confident in your product because you're telling them every little secret that they're about to get, they're about to purchase, and you're hiding nothing from them. As a kind of move on from that, you have to remember that customers are not designers. They're not necessarily visual people. They like what they like. But if you said to them, I have this, but it's in a kind of red kind of color, they're not going to be able to see it in their head. They can't visualize what it is you're trying to describe. So if you have lots of different colors of a product, or you have mix and matches of details, or whatever it is, fabrics maybe, make sure you have pictures and descriptions of each one of those colors. Separate them all out. This also happens when people are looking and they're searching for very specific criteria. They can write in blue, they can write in red, and each of your products will come up, and it will show them straight away what it is that they're looking for. Because don't forget, when a lot of people do searches, remember all the jam jars that we had, that slide where you had 21 different jam jars in front of you? People are scanning. They're literally just scanning. And if you've got, say, I don't know, let's go with handbags again. If you've got a handbag that's blue, purple, red, pink and black, but the only picture that's on your search results is the black one, well, if you're looking for another color, if you're looking for that red or that purple, and you're scanning all the pictures, that bag is not going to pop out. So you have to make sure that everything is separated out so people can see it visually. Again, make sure you have search. When we talk about the jam jars again, remember that we had the 3 jam jars and the 5 jam jars. These are the jam jar settings, if you like, for products that are the most optimum. We've got enough choice that we have some things to compare to and we're making a decision, but it's not overwhelming. Search does this for you. It narrows down the field for you. So if you include tags in each of your listings, you make sure all of those little words, metadata, and various little key words and descriptions are in the product description itself. When people are searching, the right results for them will always come up. It gives them exactly what they want right in front of their face, and then all they have to do is not worry about how to find it or sift through a load of irrelevant stuff. Everything in front of them is relevant, so they can go through and look at each one carefully, like we did with our jam jars. You can look at each side, you can read the description, you can see which one is perfect for you because you've got the time. Next part is you don't sell your products, your friends do, and I'm going to assume that most people have bought something from Amazon at some point in their lifetime. Most people have. Well, the first thing a lot of people do is look at the reviews because they want to see a recommendation or piece of information from somebody else who isn't the brand or trying to sell them anything. They're looking for a review from someone who is neutral, who was interested in the product, and who either liked it or didn't like it, and why. What reasons did they have for liking or not liking? That information to a customer is worth far more than the best advertising campaign you can ever come up with. They will rely on that way more than anything else. So if you do have the capability for comments, if you do have some kind of system where people can give some feedback on your products, please make sure that it's on. Even if you get some bad feedback, that's good for you because you can then look at the product and see if there's a problem. If it's something that maybe 5 or 6 people have said, really quickly then whether there's a problem with your product. You can take it off, look at it, maybe redesign it or find a solution, and then put it back on when it's ready. In the same way, if it's a really great product and people are saying such amazing things about it, you want those reviews visual so that when someone else comes to buy that product, they might be sitting there going, well, maybe, I'm not sure. Those reviews will tip them over the balance. They'll be quite happy with that product just from seeing the reviews that people have given the product itself. Now, you need to make sure also that your policies are clear. Information about returns, your security for credit cards, shipping, any kind of bit of information you can give people, it provides trust. You know, we're trying to increase the trust between somebody looking at the computer screen or coming in your store and handing over their credit card, handing over their money. They need to trust the person that they're giving it to. So especially online, the more information you can give people that tell them exactly what you are about. You're not trying to hide anything, you're not trying to con anyone, you're not trying to do anything that's dodgy. The more information you give them, the more comfortable they will feel and the more they will trust you. In terms of increasing a little bit of sales and increasing your conversion chart, again, going back to Amazon, there's that part, if you look at a product, where it says people who looked at this product also looked at X, Y, and Z, and they give you a little range of products that are relevant to what it is you're looking at. Now, if people found your product, they might want something similar. They might be looking at a pair of shoes, and just so happens you have a handbag that matches, and they're like, great, okay, same fabric, or the colors match, perfect. Now you don't have to go shopping somewhere else to match the shoes to a bag or whatever the product is. If you've got relevant products that you can show people together, you have to make sure that you're upselling them and cross-selling them, showing people the opportunities they've got to increase your conversion, but also make it really easy for them to solve a problem. If they're going to have to find a matching handbag anyway, they may as well get it from you, and they already trust you because they're already looking at your products. They're thinking about buying your products, so that clearly they've got some trust. You've shown them something that they want and that they're interested in, and they've got the confidence now to buy something. It makes so much more sense for them, and it's a lot easier for them to buy more products from you rather than searching and starting the whole process off again. Now, these are just some tips for your website in general as we kind of close up the webinar today. Make sure you keep your layout really nice and clean. You don't want to make customers work for anything. They have to have everything really super easy. The navigation, the way that everything is laid out, everything needs to be really clean and clear. When you're talking about your brand, and this is the thing that a lot of questions I always get asked about this point, people actually buy from people. Unless you're a big brand with a huge, great big label, people feel way more comfortable buying from another person than they do this anonymous brand situation. So if there's a way of making it personal, maybe in an about page, maybe, as we were saying before, trying to build that connection with a customer, if there's a way of making it a little bit more personal, customers will always come back to you because they know that you have an interest in them. And just to give you an example, when I was a lot younger now, many years ago, I used to work in a shop, and it was very high-end. It was an individual brand, but it was super high-end in London. And we would get customers coming in from all across the world, and they were very kind of high-end, some celebrities, things like that. And every time somebody came in, I mean, you wouldn't necessarily know who they were. They were random lords and ladies and people like that. You wouldn't, you know, it's not Madonna or someone like that you might recognize. But my manager had a photograph of every single important customer that used to be regular and spend a lot of money in our store. And every kind of week or so, she'd make sure that all of the staff in the shop, there's only 4 of us, we'd all go through this book, and it's like a folder of photos with their names on. So anytime one of those customers came in the shop, and they might not have been in for 3 or 4 years, someone would know who they were and would call them by name and would greet them by name. Now, obviously, that's a bit more difficult if you're online, but remembering things about them, remembering maybe a birthday, or if there's some way of getting a little bit of information, like looking at their sales record. Are they like a particular color, for example? Maybe then you could offer them another range of products in their favorite color. Maybe you could look at their sales record and say, okay, well, they're this size and they keep buying in this size and they like this style. Maybe I would recommend this outfit for you next time. And make it a little bit more personal. If you can do that, people feel like they are buying from people. And the last couple of things to make sure you've got is an about page and a contact page. As I was talking about that company in China before, it's wholesaledressnet.com, by the way. That website, their contact page was awful. It was really awful. It took me ages to find anything, which made me more angry as I'm looking to try and contact them. And also your about page tells people your story. Again, if you can make it personal, give them a little bit of information about you, maybe even a photo. People feel like they're connected to you. They feel trust because they know how to contact you. You're not trying to hide from them. You're giving them a way to contact them really easily. So you're building trust, you're building a connection. If you can go so far as to put a Skype number on there or a way for them to contact you like that, or an address if you've got a store, or even a phone number, it only increases people's trust, and that's what we're trying to do. So that's the end of the webinar today. I'm really hoping that you guys got a few tips and bits and pieces that you can take away and maybe implement in your own businesses.